Hey everybody, welcome back to Drawings by Trent YouTube channel. Glad to have you with us. If you have enjoyed things so far, we're happy for that. Love to have you like, subscribe, comment, share, do all the things you do when you watch on YouTube. Today, we are going to be talking about dealing with diagnosis and kind of how we went through that process of getting the diagnosis. And it was a difficult time, but we'll share more of that with you later. Okay, welcome back. We are talking about dealing with diagnosis today. Where are we starting?
When he was 12 months old, he had a well baby visit. And we went to the doctor, and I said, okay, I know he's our third child. I'm trying not to compare. I know a sister was the next child before him, and she was ahead and everything. So trying not to compare. But he doesn't say dad, dad, or mama. He doesn't point. He pushes us around the house.
Literally pushes us around the house.
Doesn't babble. Mm-hmm. And I had concerns. We knew nothing about autism except the movie Rain Man. Mm-hmm. That's it. And so autism didn't even enter our minds, I don't think. Not at all.
No.
And this would have been 1998. He was born in November of 97, so it was just before 99. So I went to the doctor, and he said, well, he's a boy. Boys are slow to develop sometimes. Give him time. I think he's fine. So at 15 months, I don't know if that was another well baby checkup or what, but I said to the doctor, he still doesn't point. He still hasn't had a word. He still pushes us around the house.
Had we had the first hearing test by that point?
Maybe. I don't remember when those hearing tests happened. Yeah, we thought he was deaf.
Yeah. Not only did we not have any clue about autism or even consider it as a diagnosis, I think we had his hearing checked 3 times in the booth in that year and a half or whatever. Yeah, like serious taking him in because he was not pointing, he was not talking, he could be hyper focused on things. But I remember, do you remember when we lived in Leon, he was playing with his little VeggieTales toys or something on the floor in the living room in front of the TV. And I did the thing that they see on TV. I literally got 2 pans out of the cupboard, walked quietly up behind him, and just banged him hard right behind his head. And he did not flinch. He didn't move. He didn't make a noise. It was nothing. And I'm like, response. Yep, that's it. He's deaf. He can't, like any person who could hear would freak out about that because he was like totally engrossed in what he was doing. And
right. So at that 15-month visit, I think it was 15 or 18 months. I don't remember. The doctor said, I still think he's fine, but for your own peace of mind, I will send you to St. Francis for evaluations for speech and OT.
He was very kind, but he was also a little condescending.
Yeah, he absolutely thought he was fine.
Yeah.
And at that time, I'm sure he hadn't seen a lot of autism yet. But went for the visit, and the speech path said he's about 9-month level. And I was like, I told you he was behind. But he stayed about 9-month level for about 5 years.
Is that when we were driving back and forth to St. Francis all the time?
We had rainbow services coming into our house 3 times a week, and we went to St. Francis for therapies 3 days a week. So he was getting a lot of therapy. Thankfully, I was staying home at the time. I mean, we were dirt poor, but I stayed home. And I mean, he was the kind of kid that
driving back and forth.
He was the kind of kid that I just couldn't work outside of the home.
Yeah.
But back to his diagnosis, we were at speech, and the speech path said, we're not going to assume it's autism. And we said, what?
Yeah.
And she kind of like backtracked, like maybe I shouldn't have said that. I always kind of felt like she probably shouldn't have said that, because then we're like, I mean, internet was around, but it was fairly new. We did go study it, like looked it up, went right. You had a difficult time after that appointment.
Yeah.
He kind of broke down in the car.
Yeah. And again, but we didn't even really know.
Broke down, and he said, the first thing he said was, he'll never play football.
Yeah.
But, the reason that was in our heads was because he pushed us around the house. He pushed furniture. Like, he needed deep pressure.
Oh, yeah.
He was a bruiser.
Yeah. We had some friends that had a son who was was he just a little older than Trent?
He was born in December.
Okay, so just a month younger. And we would sit them down in the living room. They'd sit on the floor next to each other, and their little boy was, wobbly or whatever, and Trent just like a boulder.
Yeah,
he'd just like reach over and like push this other kid, and he just flopped down. Like, yeah, he was big. And so we had been joking for a year and a half about how Trent was going to, be this big
linebacker,
center lineman or something. And anyway.
So we had these therapies, and so this lady said this, and so we immediately went home and Googled it. I'm sure it wasn't Google.
I don't know what AOL.
World Wide Webbed
AOL'd it. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, even back then, I don't remember there being a ton of stuff.
But I found a checklist of 10 things.
Yeah.
To look for autism, and he hit 9 of the 10.
Yeah.
And the one that he didn't hit was doesn't like to be touched. Well, he was the opposite, and he had extreme pressure. So he actually did have that marker. It was just on the other end of the spectrum. Right. And we're like, of course he has autism. Of course he does.
Yeah.
So we got on a waiting list for the developmental pediatrician, and finally, so this was maybe at 2 or something, and he wasn't diagnosed till like 2 years, 10 months. But at that point, we're like, okay, we're just going through the steps at this point to get the diagnosis.
Yeah, because you have to have the diagnosis to get anything else, like
to apply for benefits or things. Which at the time he did qualify for some benefits,
or to get the IEP, and all of that stuff. You have to have a diagnosis to kind of move forward. At least that's what we thought.
Now that's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down, because that's not true. But people think that's true. Anyway,
when you're in your mid-20s.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know.
Yeah, we're like, this.
But he did. He was in early childhood. I mean, they actually entered him into early childhood before he was diagnosed, because it was obvious. He had no speech.
Yeah.
Didn't
he start young, or was that TJ?
He started young. He and TJ both started just before they turned 3. They actually started Trent at the beginning of the school year, and I think they probably weren't supposed to start him that early.
Oh.
Like, they started him in August, and he didn't turn 3 till November. But it was a small town, and it was totally obvious that he needed the support.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, he had a lot of early intervention, which was good.
Yeah, we've said, for a long time, I think, of course, we were involved in church. And so Trent's born, and we take him to church. And what happens when you take a baby to church? Every person wants to hold the baby and all that kind of stuff. And so we have no idea, but I've often thought that probably was a benefit to him at being a baby and kind of being passed around and being held by a bunch of different people and getting, interaction and stuff, that maybe that helped in his development early on, so that he didn't hate touch or whatever. He's always, I don't know, that's probably a strong word, but he's often tolerated in his life, being around other people and
right, which has been great for his business.
Oh yeah.
But if you are waiting for a diagnosis, or suspect something of your toddler, your 2 or 3-year-old, please contact the public school system. They have early intervention. They have early childhood education. And even at 2 years, 9 months, they could be screening for that and getting him in even without a diagnosis. So we kind of eased into his diagnosis, I think, because
After that first day.
after she mentioned the word.
Yeah.
But as far as our dealing with his diagnosis, I think it was just very gradual.
Yeah. And I think the other thing we'd say is that I don't feel like we were ever jerks to the doctor or the school district or anything like that, but we were insistent about some things. We gave the school district time to try different things that might work before we said, okay, that's enough. It's time to, take this to the next level. And even like Andrea with the doctor, we went in a few times and, something doesn't seem right. And he's like, it'll be fine. And then, your persistence in that helped to get more of those early interventions.
Well, and the doctor said what every doctor should believe and every educator should believe is that you know your child better than anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, he said that. He said, well, you're his mom and you know him better than I do.
Yeah. So that was right after. I don't think he needs to go.
Right.
But you're his mom but I think the message really is like we say with Trent's business, I think on an earlier episode, we talked about how we're Trent's voice in the world. And so we are doing what Trent would probably do for himself if he were neurotypical, and if he could do that, if he could network, and if he could put himself out there. He can't, and so we're doing that for him. We're kind of being that voice for him. And I think the same thing is true when your child is young. You have to be their advocate. You have to be the one as a parent to step out and go, I may not know everything, but there's a problem, there's an issue here, and we need to figure out what it is. And doctors, educators, they know a lot, but they don't know everything, and they might miss stuff. And so you got to do some research, and you got to stick to your guns. I mean, there's some rough times in there. The episode is called Dealing with Diagnosis, and there were times where dealing with that diagnosis was a lot more difficult than others, and you start thinking about what is life going to look like for your child.
And also, like, maybe trying not to dwell on that.
Yeah.
What that's going to look like later down the road. You just kind of can't let yourself go down that rabbit hole, because who knows?
Yeah, you can't know. Yeah, I mean, we never would have. Trent's always drawn. We never would have expected to be in the place we're in and doing the things that we're doing.
No.
And how drastically, it might not be the right word, Trent's diagnosis has affected all of us in our lives. And the very fact that we're doing this, we got social media and YouTube and podcast and all these things talking about Trent, talking about our lives, how we got through trying to encourage and educate and inspire people all over the world. We could have never dreamed that we'd be sitting here doing that.
No.
Back then, and yet those times were some of those times, and especially for me, honestly, I think Andrea handled a lot of that stuff much better than I did. Like, I'd go up in Trent's room to pray with him or whatever at night, and I'd get all kinds of caught up in what life is going to look like. Is he ever going to have a relationship with somebody's ever going to get married? Is ever going to have kids? Like, is he ever going to be able to have a job? I got wrapped up in all of that kind of stuff and freaked myself out. And then I'd come back to Andrea and be like, oh. And she'd be like, oh, quit being dumb. No, she didn't say those words.
I don't worry. I just don't worry about the future as much as you do in general. you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Tristan. I'm Trent's older sister by 19 months. I work in the autism field. I'm Trent's sister. So personal and professional autism fields, whatever. Anyway, because we're so close in age, I don't remember Trent being diagnosed at all. I was like 3.5. No, I was probably like 4 when he was diagnosed, and I don't remember that. I do remember, obviously, that he was different than my other siblings, my older brother and then my youngest brother. Trent has level 3 autism, so his autism is going to look a lot different than a person who was like in my class and had autism, maybe, because he required very substantial support. He just needed a lot more help and support. Yeah, I don't really remember that, but I guess I can speak to kind of, just because of my field and what I do for work, that a diagnosis can be extremely beneficial for an individual, especially if they really need that support, but they're unable to tell their teachers or speak out about needing that support. When that is the case, if they really do need help and they're unable to go to their teacher and ask for it or talk to someone about getting help at school, that is when it's really important for the parent or guardian to get involved, especially in an IEP meeting or something, because you can be the advocate for your child and model that, so that one day, hopefully, they can be that advocate for themselves, and speak out about what they need and what's going to help them achieve their goals and succeed. Trent has some communication, but is mostly nonverbal. Most of his words and phrases are scripted or learned phrases. Sometimes, very, very rarely, are they independent from his own mind. So with Trent, a diagnosis obviously is going to help him, or help, I guess, mostly a diagnosis for someone like Trent is going to help his family know how to handle him and how to meet his needs, how he needs it. Whereas, let's say a person with like level 1 autism, them getting a diagnosis is going to help them be able to advocate for themselves, or help their parents make sure that they meet the needs of their child, or that their child gets their needs met. So I think a diagnosis is really important. A diagnosis is not always needed. Some people don't want to get a diagnosis. The only thing that I would say to that, it's your own life. If you don't want to move forward with a diagnosis, that is totally fine and up to you. But it could really help in the future, if they get a job and if they're really struggling with certain intrapersonal skills in the job, then the employer knowing that they have a diagnosis is going to give them a lot more grace, and be able to help them better to do their job. And it's gonna, hopefully it would, ideally, it would cut down on reprimands or getting in trouble at work, because maybe the individual has really poor time management skills, and they need a lot more help. Like maybe they need a schedule, or they need to be told when, to wake up if they need this much time to get ready, and then when they need to leave their house by. An employer could possibly be willing to help you do that, especially if they have proof, that you have a diagnosis and you need support, or maybe you need substantial support, and they're more likely to be able to help you and have more grace in that if you do have a diagnosis.
Alright, are you ready to do some requests?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
Unicorn dinosaur.
Nice.
All right. Thanks again for joining us of this episode. And if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, if it was encouraging, inspiring, educating, love to have you like, subscribe, comment, share, and just excited to have you on this ride with us. Next episode, we're going to be talking about what are we going to be talking about?
Learning about autism.
And educating yourselves and the family, because that was, it was a thing that had to happen with
Right.
the kids and with the grandparents and aunts and uncles and
Save
all
it
that
for
stuff.
the episode.
Yeah. So join us back here next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.